Listen to better music and listen to music better. Welcome to True Tunes at 45 RPM, the short-form version of the ongoing conversation you'll hear on the True Tunes podcast and in the digital pages at truetunes.com. And now your host, John J. Thompson.
Welcome back to another episode of True Tunes at 45 RPM. I am excited today to bring you a few minutes of a conversation I had with Ben Seidl, known in the music world as Roemer. Based out of Berlin, but originally from St. Louis, Missouri, Roemer is a fascinating artist. A church-planting mission sent him to Europe 17 years ago, but his extensive experience there has helped him to grow in some important ways. When we were hanging out on my back deck one night last summer, he mentioned two significant quotes from two very different men, both of which he had found displayed prominently on the walls of a university in Berlin. Let's listen to a little bit of audio from that conversation.
On the wall of the theology department at the Humboldt University, there's a quote from Deitrick Bonhoeffer, who was he was a pastor in the city at the time, but also an adjunct theology professor. And it says the church has an obligation, an unconditional obligation towards the victims of any social order, even if they're not part of Christian community. And I would walk by that on my way to class every day. And to me, that's a very profound statement. It resonates with me continually, especially in recent times, in some really interesting ways. On the other end of campus, in a different building, in the main building, when you walk in, there's a quote from Karl Marx, who was actually a student at this university, and it says, "Philosophers have merely interpreted the world. It is up to you, however, to change it." And to me, I think those are really interesting, benchmarks to think about. How to live a life. I've always felt compelled to want to live a life that's bent towards justice and bent towards grace and bent towards the notion that there are things that I think are broken or that could be better. And oftentimes it's me reflecting on it and me realizing that I'm a part of what has made things broken, and I'm a part of what's made people feel like another, an other. It's those two quotes that kind of help me think about, I guess, there's that cliche quote, wanting to be the change that you see in the world. I don't know, I think there's a really interesting place where Marx and Bonhoeffer cross, and it's in Berlin. That's why I learned about it.
Can you imagine an American Christian college having a Karl Marx quote up on the...
Oh, no. Yeah. Well, I can imagine it,
right.
But I don't know how long they would be funded.
Bonhoeffer and Marx. Wow. But the heart those ideas helped to cultivate in Ben Seidl is inspiring to me. In addition to providing counseling and support to missionaries in Europe, he has tapped into his neighbors' hunger for singer-songwriter music, both as an artist and as a cultivator of community. He's building relationships right there on his street, meeting needs, hearing stories, seeing faces. For Ben, this is not a project or even merely a calling. It's a life.
Come to the table, those who aren't able to fight. Come to the table, all who aren't able to say, I'm alright.
Later in our conversation, when Ben mentioned that he had studied theology and missiology and was constantly finding new and interesting ways to apply those things to his work, I asked him to explain what he meant by missiology and how that was relevant to artists working in a cross-cultural context.
Once people move across cross-cultural boundaries or borders, whether it be lingual or familial or just even geographical, you are going to start recognizing and noticing changes around you. But you are still interacting with this new environment with your old pair of glasses on. And missiology seeks to help you understand how to see the world through a new pair of lenses for your own good and for the good of others, because when people start moving in cross-cultural directions, and whether it be through business, whether it be for theology, whether it be for love, conflict is inevitable, and pain can happen,
right,
and harm can happen. Missiology seeks to sometimes explain, how does that harm happen? How can we not have harm happen? And answer questions like that.
Thanks again to our buddy from Berlin, Ben Seidl. Don't miss his compelling bare-bones acoustic album, I Fly Solo. We'll have more with Ben next time on True Tunes at 45 RPM. But that's all the time we have today. The Runout Groove is coming up quickly. If you dig this show, please subscribe. Also, please leave us a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe to our email list at truetunes.com and follow us on Facebook at TrueTunesNow. You can find me on Twitter at John J. Thompson and on Instagram at TheOnlyJJT and at TrueTunesMusic. You can support this show through our patreon.com/TrueTunes community or via a one-time tip linked on the show notes page. We also have a new merch store at Threadless that you can check out. Please tell your friends about the show, post it on your socials, and let us know what you think.
True Tunes at 45 RPM is produced by John J. Thompson and Bruce A. Brown for Gyroscope Productions and is intended for the private use of our listening audience. The contents are protected by US copyright law and are the intellectual property of Gyroscope Productions, with the exception of songs or clips that are from previously copywritten materials. Everything on this episode is used by permission or under fair use provisions. Thanks for listening. Cheers. We'll see you next time.